I'm Linda Bremner. I'm from a little town just outside of Calgary called Okotoks up in Canada. Um, Before LifeWave, my main thing was my background was oil field. So all my life I'd had a job selling drill bits. So I had lots of heavy lifting and I figured things would catch up to me sooner or later. So I did end up with some back issues, but um, they came on all of a sudden. Just I was fine one day, and then all of a sudden I just had excruciating back pain that was radiating down to the front of my leg. And when it was diagnosed, it came up with that I had degenerative discs in my back that were degenerated enough that I should expect to have surgery within the next couple of years, and a little bit in my hip, and also arthritis. And then they just threw in osteoporosis because I'd had cancer 15 years prior to that. I had breast cancer, and against my better judgment, I did go ahead and had radiation, and they put me on tamoxifen for 5 years. And I didn't realize that that would put me into osteoporosis. So when I was done the 5 years, they said, okay, now let's start checking your bone density. And as soon as they checked it, they went, "Oh my goodness, you're in osteopenia, not osteoporosis, but osteopenia." And about a year before the cancer, I had dislocated my elbow. And the doctor was amazed, the surgeon. He said, "Your bones are like concrete." He said, "I've never seen an elbow dislocate before an arm will break." I got thrown by a horse and in the mountains, and it wasn't very nice. But anyway, so I had really good bone density prior to this. So they started checking bone density, and every 5 years I had to go back for this bone density test, and every 2 years rather. And every 2 years it would go down by 0.3%, 0.2, 0.1, 0.2. And every year they kept saying, "You have to take the drugs for your bone density. We have to get your bone density up." And I just kept saying thanks, but no thanks. And finally, the year before I got introduced to LifeWave, that I actually crossed into having osteoporosis. And so then the doctor was really putting the pressure on, "You have to take this drug." And I said, "No, I won't take it. I'll try this or that, some other natural ways." But anyway, so I had the osteoporosis. So I started patching in December. And then in March, I'd already had a bone scan already scheduled. So when I went in for the bone scan, the doctor called me after, a couple of weeks later, and she says, "What are you doing different?" And I said, "Well, I started wearing this patch, through a company called LifeWave that is supposed to help with bone density." So it got my attention right away. And she said, "Well, whatever that patch is, you keep wearing it because you no longer have osteoporosis. Your bone density increased by 0.6%, which, according to her, is amazing." She said if it had increased that much over the whole 2 year span, let alone in the 4 months that I started patching, she said, if you really haven't done anything different than you've been doing for the last 5 scans or the last 10 years, it's incredible. And I hadn't. So what I'd started with when I first started patching, I started with IceWave because I was in a lot of pain. Like it would go up to a 7 or 8, I would say at times. It was quite constant and really serious pain. I started with IceWave, and I was lucky enough, I hit the sweet spot, and within a couple of minutes, the pain just dissipated. And I was using X39, X49, Eon for the arthritis that was in my back, and of course, Alavida for my skin.
And, you look amazing, but go ahead.
And so I started with that. And then after about 2 weeks with using the IceWave full time, I thought, geez, I'm not in pain anymore. And so I stopped using the IceWave. And then once in a while, if I felt any discomfort, never back to a 7, like if the discomfort would be like a 2 or a 3, I'd slap on the IceWave and it would take it away right away. But the pain has never come back. I'm scheduled for my next bone density, so it'll be 2 years next March. So I'm really excited. I can't wait to see what it comes up with. But that was the one main thing. And then my other one, like Penny, the good old bladder issue. I probably started having bladder issues 25 years ago. And it would be like a painful, frequent urgency. you know, where you'd have like the 10-second warning where it's like, I gotta go now. And you'd be making the mad dash for the washroom. I was getting up, it was getting progressively worse with time, but I was getting up towards the end here 3, 4, 5 times a night to go to the washroom. So obviously I wasn't sleeping well, you know, and it was not very pleasant. So then one day, about 4 months ago, and I'd been patching for about a year, it wasn't even on my radar, wasn't even thinking about it. I woke up and it was 6:30 and I thought, what the heck? I don't remember laying down for a nap this afternoon. I slept till 6:30, and it took me a moment to realize I'd slept through the night, probably for the first time in 15 years. And
Wow.
it just blew me away. Then when I really stopped to think, because everything that happens with us is so subtle that you don't realize that it's happening. Um, I realized that if I did get up, I was only getting up once a night, and I also wasn't having to go to the washroom half the time. And during the day now, if I have the urge, I just saunter to the washroom because I can. I don't have to make the mad dash. One other thing I forgot to mention about the osteoporosis, which is very important because there's two things, like they just said, don't quit before the miracle. Well, the miracle was my bladder because I wasn't expecting that to happen a year in. But one other thing I forgot about the whole bone density thing was that the doctor said was that it was very interesting to her that the rest of my bones were not bad. Mostly it's just bad in my back where I have the degeneration and my hip. And she said what was really interesting is my bone density was not affected throughout the rest of my body, that it was only affected where I needed it. She said it only worked where you needed it the most, and that whole 0.6% that my bone density increased was exactly in my degenerated discs and in my left hip where I needed it. So that's two things that
Wow.
you guys tell us all the time, that it goes where it's needed. And, you know, when it fixes one thing, it moves on and finds something else. So
Wow. I love that you said that. I love that. Now, Penny shared her age. Did you share your age and I miss it?
I'm not, but I'm 68.
Okay. So, Gary, I know you're going to talk about this, but I want everyone that's on here, especially our guests, more for our guests than anything, to understand that Linda really kind of hit the nail on the head here. We can't tell where our regenerative cells to go. Our bodies are so innate that they're going to derive from what's needed, and they're going to march to those areas, if you will. And as you can see, with the different timelines of these two ladies have used these patches, Penny's just been in the game for about 4 months, where Linda, you've been in it for a little bit over a year, right?
About just coming up almost a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you think of the variation, because our recommendation that we have found is 1 month's use for every decade of life. And if you heard Linda, she said, don't quit before your miracle, right? And so I love that you said that. And I love that the verification from your doctor who witnessed that within your own body and kind of verified that for you, because that is kind of a hard concept to digest sometimes. So wow. And I also love, Gary, but I'm going to turn it over to you, how you said things happen in our bodies so subtle sometimes that we don't even notice them. And I think, Linda, that happens on both sides of the coin, whether it's an imbalance that's creating something that we don't want to be dealing with, or it's something so subtle that's changing and getting better that we don't realize it until just like, oh my gosh, I slept through the night, and I haven't slept like that for 15 years, right?